So I just want to look a little bit in summary, really, because you can talk about all of this stuff in more depth, at what I regard as the key steps in this process. I'm just going to look at three steps really in the process of getting rid of tilt, becoming equanimous, becoming calm within all of our decision making points in a game of poker, in a session of many games of poker. Okay, so the first thing I'd point out is that all you need to do initially is just notice your own reactions. You don't need to do anything about them at first. You just simply need to be aware of them. Okay, just be aware of your reaction in game. Something comes along, it annoys you in game. It might be a mistake we've made. It does happen. It's one of the most annoying things I find is when I actually realize that I've made a mistake in the previous hand. It's not avoidable always. We have to learn by our mistakes, but it is frustrating. It may be a bad beat, a suck out, something like that. One of those classic things. We get annoyed by it, whatever our reaction is. Just simply be conscious of it, be aware of it, notice it, look at it. Don't suppress it, don't shove it under the rug, don't fuel it further by getting annoyed about the fact that you're having that reaction, which is just another cascade of annoyance reactions. Just sit with it. Just be conscious of it. Okay. Now, this even in itself is easier said than done. When we are, for example, in meditation, when you focus on breathing meditation, as soon as you sit down and start to focus on it, your mind will wander on to something else. And as soon as it does that, you might notice it, but you'll also start a cascade of other thoughts, thinking, "Oh, I'm thinking about something else. Why, I should be thinking about my breath," which is just further extenuation of that distraction. Whereas, of course, what you're supposed to do in that practice is just bring your attention back to the breathing. So, and that's something again that there are a lot of parallels between kind of Zen, state of mind in poker, and meditative practices. So we will come back to that one. But the principle is there's a little bit of our mind, however caught up we are in a drama or a state of mind or a state of being angry, there's a little bit of our mind that is just noticing all the rest of it happening. However deeply involved and invested in that dramatic state of mind we are, there's a little bit there, a still quiet part of our mind there, which is just looking at it quite detached and simply observing. That's the part of our mind that we want to cultivate and to grow up, really, to build up. And that is the part of the mind that I'm suggesting that you just kind of try to rest in when you notice yourself having one of these tilt reactions. Okay, so that is step one. Step two is the concept that change will actually occur naturally as a result of awareness. Okay, we don't need to try to force a change. In fact, if you do try to force a change, it's like trying to force yourself to relax when you're feeling tense, or trying to force yourself to fall asleep when you know that you've got an important day the next morning. You can't lie there thinking, "I've got to go to sleep," and kind of tensing yourself. It's just going to be entirely counterproductive. Just in the same way, if you have an anger reaction, you're not going to be able to force your way out of that reaction to kind of violently pushing against it or anything else, or so kind of just pure dint of willpower, like, "I'm not going to tilt." It's not going to work. But what does work is just becoming more relaxed. Now that again, it sounds impossible when you're in a tilt reaction. So the idea is that you develop this consciousness by increments, very gradually, and you do it again through simply resting in an awareness of your own response. And as you enable yourself to do that a little bit better each time, you will notice that the reaction changes by itself. It's not enough only to simply notice it, but as that consciousness becomes more developed, and as it becomes, as I was saying previously, that quiet little part of your awareness, which is not getting caught up in the drama, but just noticing it, can almost have a sense of nostalgia or humor to it as well. Look at me getting caught up in that again. That little bit of ourselves that isn't totally caught in it, just looking at the rest. As we cultivate that kind of consciousness, the reaction itself starts to change. And the faster we notice it, the less fuel it has to develop and sustain itself. So, when you get angry, whether it's in poker or in life, when you get angry, you get a rush of adrenaline. And when you get an adrenaline, of course, is quite involved in poker as well, and in any form of risk. When you get angry and you get a rush of adrenaline, the adrenaline then fuels the initial state of mind, which then fuels more adrenaline release and so on. And so once you're caught up in an anger response, it can be very hard to get out of it quickly. You have to kind of wait for that fire to die down again. But if you start to catch it right at the initial spark, you can actually often dissolve that reaction away before it really gains a foothold. And that's part of the solution, in fact. And again, it's to do with kind of how seriously we take ourselves, really, our own reactions, how much we choose to invest in that. If you're driving home and someone cuts you off on the way home, and you get understandably annoyed by it, you get home and you spend the next 4 or 5 hours complaining bitterly about it to people. It's an extreme example, but I know friends of mine who have certainly done things like this, and you just sit there thinking, okay, somebody caused you to suffer, but now you're causing yourself to suffer now because you're telling yourself the same story over and over again. You're just reinvesting in the suffering itself. So, people don't realize they're doing that to themselves. Okay, so this is the kind of thing the kind of pattern we're going to try to start, rewriting in our own thought processes. Okay, so the change will occur naturally, but that said, there are things we can do to support the process.